Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on a Tuesday night for our special released retained players announcements. So let's get straight on with it, and let me bring Vic on. Hi, Vic. How are you?
Hi, very well, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. As promised, we are here when the retain list was announced, and so therefore we have decided to come along. Yes, indeed.
And thank you for all the panel for able to join us at very short notice, because it was a 5 o'clock release, wasn't it? So, which we said it might be. So
yeah, should we quickly run through what it is? I've got the list in front of me, so let's go through it, and then we can get on to discuss it. The players already under contract: Ricky Aguiar, George Cowmeadow, Ben Gladwin, Ellis Iandolo, Harry McCurdy, Harrison Minturn, and here's a surprise for many: Louis Reed, Lewis Ward, Johnny Williams, another surprise for many. And there's also the 1-year option taken up on Mo Dabre. So those are the players who are under contract. These are the ones who have been offered contracts. Perhaps this is a bit of a surprise. Matthew Baldry, Manny Egbo, Harry Parsons, Akin Adamayo, Jack Payne, Jojo Wallacott, and they're also in talks with Rob Hunt at the moment, who, of course, is injured. So we don't know what that situation is. So that doesn't necessarily mean they stay, of course. They've been offered contracts.
No, it doesn't, but at least it's one step closer. We haven't released them, so that's good.
These are the ones not offered contracts, and I guess the headline is that fella there, Dion Conroy, 5 years at Swindon Town, has now come to an end. Ryan East, Manny Edem, the third choice goalkeeper, Jaden Mitchell Lawson. Now, the loanees, of course, returning to their parent clubs: Louis Barry, Brandon Cooper, Josh Davison, Jake O'Brien, and Joe Tomlinson. And Jordan Lydon remains, as progress is being monitored after his injury back in October is at the earliest.
Yeah, I think that's what we said. They said yesterday it was October that he was looking to get back. So
yes, so that's it as far as we know. And that's the retain list as issued at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, a few surprises that we'll talk about. I know Dion isn't a surprise, but I'm still gutted. But all the best for him anyway. So
yes, definitely. We've said many times on this. He's taken a lot of stick unfairly, I think, and has battled back after serious injury. And I only wish him all the very best.
Yeah.
And I hope wherever he goes next, he has good success. We wish him well.
So do I. And I think that comes from the majority of the supporters. So, okay. So should we bring the panel on? So we've got Andy, we've got Rob, we've got Andrew, and we got Anna. There we go. So I will leave you to it. Mark is actually doing the questions tonight, so he's in the background. So any comments or questions you have, please leave them, and we'll get through as many as we can. And I will speak to you later.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Right, Andy's just sorting out a shadow, I think. I think we can see you now. That's better. Let's get into the comments straight away. This is from John. Hello, John. The only real surprise is that Reed's already contracted for next season. Sad to see Conroy go, but the bottom line is that defensively we were poor, conceding more goals than anyone else in the top 10. That effectively cost us promotion, given we were top scorers in League Two. So, where do we start? Let's start with you, Andy. The two headlines, I guess, and one of them is a surprise, which is Louis Reed's under contract already, and Dion Conroy has left. Although not a surprise, because many people have already guessed that. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. If you take Conroy, first of all, it's been sort of rumoured. I mean, there's talk of him going to Orient, etc., etc. And I'd just like to say, what a great servant he's been. He was one of the Melksham 6, 7, 8, whatever you'd like to call him. And he struggled through 2 horrendous injuries. I mean, it was clearly there was probably issues that, that I'm not party to, but there would seem to have been a fallout maybe between him and Garner around Christmas time, the issues around the Man City game and that. So, hats off to Dion for being such a total professional for, how he's played, how he's behaved, how he's maintained. He's had an awful lot of stick on social media. I'm very sorry to see him go. Very pleasant surprise to see that he has signed. Gladwin and McCurdy and I think it was at Calmeadow signed, we were aware of them signing new contracts throughout the season, but Reed and Williams, we didn't. So that's a very pleasant surprise.
Well, this is from Mark, Bob Doherty as well. Need to try to do everything to get Payne and Egbo to sign again. Although Matthew says, sounds like Payne's off. Daz, hello Daz. Wallacott will be off. Darren says, best of luck, Dion. Tony says, good luck to Dion. Had bad luck and injuries. Also being exiled by Sheridan. Again, good luck. Jason says, Vic, I was one of those who gave DC criticism. I publicly apologised to him. He had pre-contract agreement at Orient a month ago. I mean, Rob, that rumour's been around a while, hasn't it? And we do believe his next destination is Brisbane Road.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, and all our very best wishes to him. I think he will always go down as one of those players that stuck by our club in the darkest of times. And I think we all know last close season was probably as dark as it's been. And for him to still be there through Lord knows how much stick he's taken over the course of the last 5 years he's been with the club. I think all of it unmerited, because I think there's no doubt whatsoever that he always gave his all for the club. He always did everything in the background as well as a model professional, as a captain, to try and help people off the pitch as well as on it. So it's a sad day to see him go, but sad days present opportunities, don't they? And I think that's the one thing about close season. As much as we lament those players who may no longer be here, it leaves space in the squad to bring in new fresh blood. And I think it's essential that Swindon sort out their defensive situation during the close season. I don't think there's any doubt at all that we did ship too many goals over the course of the season just past. And if they can do that, the midfield, we will see Jack Payne sign a contract to join the others that you've mentioned as activating whatever clause they may have, then that would leave us in a situation where we know we've got the attacking talent in the midfield areas. Go and get the strikers that we need to push us into League One. Yeah,
Andrew. I mean, it was a surprise about Louis Reed and Johnny. I mean, we've not seen that mentioned anywhere. I mean, was there any? You didn't pick up any inkling around the ground at all?
It's sort of been. It's one of those things where the drums have sort of been beating quietly. I suppose that they might still be around, but there's certainly not been anything official, because I would assume if there'd been anything official, we all would have noticed and got out the champagne and streamers for Reed signing for another year. So no, those are good surprises to have Reed and Williams definitely on board for next season, I think, and that clearly with sort of Aguiar and Gladwin as well, that certainly gives you a midfield you've already got in place, and you can maybe make some additions to that as well.
Yeah, lots are coming in. Ian Rayner under contract. That was agreed earlier in the season from Carroll. Does that make? I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost with that one. I don't know. Tony Goff says, what about Johnny Williams? Well, that's another year on his contract. Simon Batchelor says, nice to see Reed and Williams tied up. Hold on to them, and McCurdy, we have a pretty good starting place. Lee Exton, absolutely buzzing that Reed and Williams sign for next season along with H. I feel like Hunt and Jojo will be off this summer. A very strong base to work with, exciting. And Andy says Dion has been loyal servant to STFC. Good luck to him, except against us, of course. And Jason says Hunt's also been involved in talks with Wellens about joining Orient. Anna, that's also been rumoured, hasn't it? Obviously he knows Richie Wellens. Wellens knows them.
Yeah, I think the same goes for Hunt as goes for Conroy. Hunt played with for Wellens at Oldham as well, didn't he? So there's some history there. And yeah, just to reiterate, the best wishes and good luck go to Dion Conroy wherever he goes. What commitment that player has shown to us. 5 years through ups and downs, and the particular ups and downs he's gone through this season, to come out in the last 5 or 6 games that he played for us with such tremendous commitment and talent, to be fair. So sad to see him go, but probably arguably the best for him and us at this point. Time for him to move on. So, but yeah, delighted to see Reed and Williams' names on the retained list, albeit yeah, we had to do sort of a double, triple take on that a little bit, because that wasn't anything in the news recently, was it, as we just discussed? So, but very, very, very early days, as we know, the list has just come out, and that the transfer sagas are only just beginning.
Yes, they are. 30th of June, I think, is when they all end the contracts, isn't it? So there'll be lots of talk between now and then about who's going. Hello to Paddy. Thank you to those players leaving. Good to see Reed and Williams here next season. Let's hope those offered terms decide to stay. If not, then again, thanks for your efforts in the red shirt. And agree with Andy. Got to respect Dion Conroy to have a bad injury, come back and get another real bad one's enough to test any player. All the best to him. I still don't understand why he didn't take that 5th penalty. Do you know, I still don't get it. Anyway, there we are. We can't go over that again. I can't take it. So then, Andy, what do you think about the basis of what we've got for next season? It's already been pointed out. Manny Egbo is one that you would hope would sign because, you know, with a pre-season, he'll be an absolute beast next year, won't he?
Well, it's really nice, isn't it, to actually have a season. I think it was mentioned last night. You know, when was the last time we had a sort of where a manager has been in situ the whole season? He's had the bulk of his players, and was able to look at some, you know, this year, and obviously some haven't, you know, worked out. You know, the Mitchell Lawsons and that. So he's got a foolproof season with the majority of those players. Obviously, hopefully, the ones will re-sign. If the ones re-sign that we do, I mean, I'm very, very excited because, like you say, Egbo with a full pre-season in, and well, all of them with a pre-season. Because let's face it, what do we have? 2, possibly 3 weeks of not even that of pre-season last year. So with a few, you know, it all starts now, doesn't it? The phony wall starts. You've got to, you know, we've got to hope that those that have been offered sign. That we replace those good loan signings that we had in, and also replace we do need to replace the Mitchell Lawsons and the Easts of this world, because that's where we got a little bit flaky some around January, February time, where we just didn't have a bench, did we, when people were getting injured. So it's exciting. It is exciting.
Yeah. Can you stop the birds singing, Vic? Well, who's got the birds near them? Who wants to own up to the birds?
8 Miles High, or was that one? I didn't. Yeah.
BYRDS. No, it's not that one. No.
All right. Yeah.
Any birds nearby? No, none here. Anyway,
I think it's just Harry McCurdy on holiday.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this. Lots of comments coming in. Kevin says McCurdy and Iandolo will be targets from clubs in League One, but are we a selling club? Rob Hartley, are we a selling club anymore or not?
Well, it's a question that we'll all be debating through the summer. I think it's we know the financial straitjacket that we found ourselves in last summer, and what the very, very small pool of players that potentially we had to choose from last year because of the financial restrictions. All of a sudden, a number of those players are in the shop window. They've been seen to have a particularly successful season. So you would hope that questions will be asked of our ability to be able to keep players over this summer, because that just reflects well on how well they played last season. I think we don't really know the size of budget for which Clem Morphoon is prepared to sign off for a club for next season. Obviously, the financial situation has improved significantly over the course of the last 12 months. So let's just hope that we don't become that selling club. We do have the opportunity to keep these players on, but let's be perfectly frank as well. There could be money coming in from Scott Twine. He could be on his way somewhere else. That could strengthen our budget. We may also be in a situation where a very big offer comes in for a la McCurdy, a la Reed, who knows? And that could be worthwhile in squad rebuilding to take. So it's not necessarily a case for me as to whether we're a selling club or what. It's a question of, is that the right deal on the table for all parties? And we'll just have to judge that when it comes. Just one last thing on Dion Conroy, Vic, before we forget that topic completely. The best news for me was that he was a goal scorer with the last touch in a Swindon shirt.
Yeah, very true.
He should be remembered.
Yeah, and I will hold it up again. There it is. Let's not forget Swindon 1, Oldham Athletic 0. I know it was something that got Mr. Halls quite excited at the time. Yeah. Tom Jenkins Here's a name from the past. Imagine, yes, imagine how good our recruitment will be now that the embargo is gone. Can't wait to see who we bring in to complement those we keep on. Sean says, I'm still hearing John Guthrie, 6'3" centre back for Northampton. Just been told he's been released. He's a local boy, I think, isn't he, too? Ian says, surprised about Odomayo being offered another contract. I personally rate him, as he, for whatever reason, not being able to force himself past Conroy or Bowdry as other defenders. Daz says, good to hit the ground running. Malcolm says, no surprise Dion going. His dad said as much a month ago on the train back to London, and I'm with you on the fifth pen. The birds have been sorted out. I think Andy got up, caught them and put them in a cage. So well done for that, Andy. Lee says Bowdry staying would be a big benefit. He had a great finish to the season. Was that a surprise for you, Andrew? Because he was extraordinary at the end of the season, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a bit of a sort of revelation, but clearly he seemed to work out, or something has perhaps happened to help his fitness along, because by the end of the season he was reeling off Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Thursday, no problem at all. So I guess if he was still determined to retire, the club wouldn't have offered him a new contract, so we can kind of hopefully put 2 + 2 together there. And I think trying to keep hold of him is quite important, because one, he's a defender who can play in the style that we want to play. We've sort of seen we've seen him do the Beckenbauer bit, although there must be some French Beckenbauer equivalent that we ought to be able to think of. So we've kind of seen him do that, and also from what you kind of hear or what the players say, he does seem to be sort of quite an influential presence off the pitch as well. So, kind of experience and leadership. So keeping him around would, I think, be quite a important sort of important in terms of continuity if we can do that.
Would you put him in the Gordon Greer class for leadership? If you see what I mean?
I do. I don't know if it's that strong, but people do seem to kind of defer to him a little bit. Whereas I gather it was almost sort of Gordon Greer's dressing room rather than Danny Wilson's, wasn't it? Well, that's always the way the rumour mill seems to go.
Hello, Kian. Would like to see Odomayo stay, but sure he has a better offer elsewhere for more first-team footy. Payne's a massive must stay, with Reid, H and Williams saying that he could persuade him. Staying could persuade him. This from the Swindon Town Football Club supporters group. Harry McCurdy has cut his hair. We were discussing this, Anna, were we not? Just before we started this. It is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, yes. I think, looks good to me.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's now
get
short.
Get your summer holidays in, get your hair short.
Yeah, it's now short and sort of...
Get the sun on your back.
We weren't really sure what the colour was, but it's sort of grey kind of...
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, there it is. Hold up a bit more. Oh, it's got the time in the middle. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that colour. Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah, that sorts that out. Yeah. Ian says, not sure McCurdy would necessarily be attractive to other clubs. Garner got the best out of him. Others may not be able to do the same. Terry says, is it possible to have loan players for the whole season? For example, they can't be recalled in January. No money can replace Reid. He's everywhere and holds the midfield in place. That's true, Anna. I mean, he's had a fantastic season, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Just going back to that comment about loan players, I'm really interested to see what the strategy is around signings and loan players, because we know that it didn't really work out for us this year, this season, partly because we had 2 key recalls just at the moment when we didn't want those players to be recalled. And there is no way, as I understand it, of preventing clubs from doing that, because that's those loanees are those clubs' players. But I'm really interested to see, how are we going to recruit into key positions to ensure that if you do bring a loan player in, you've got a backup in some respect, or the loan player is the backup. And I know that's difficult when perhaps you've got an agreement with the loaning club that player is going to make a certain amount of appearances. So I think that's really key to how we perform next season. And also, just out of interest, so the players that are retained obviously are on contract till the end of next season. Are we going to be offering any players 2-year contracts? Because that's where you really get the continuity, isn't it? If you're still building squads pretty much year on year with nobody signing on for a slightly longer deal, then you still got to look pretty much to say do a 50%, 40% rebuild every close season. So those are the things I'm kind of interested in seeing how that develops really.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, if they stay under this, you can always now issue them extensions, can't you? I assume you can negotiate with players and say throughout the course of next season, if you want to stay longer, here's a. I mean, that loan signing, Andy, it was annoying, wasn't it? I mean, we had great goals from Tyrese Simpson with 11. Then we lost the centre half, Romano Critchlow, and things like and Kessler Hayden. They were a third of the team. You lost them because of loan recalls.
Well, that I was thinking that was not dissimilar to 2 years prior to that one when Yates and Doyle had to go back, didn't they? But this time, I think it caught Garner by surprise. He genuinely didn't think that those three were going to be returned. It was quite ironic as well. Critchlow went back, then went to Plymouth and didn't hardly play, did he, for Plymouth? No. And am I right in thinking that Davidson was due to come anyway, as well as Simpson? I think that was a rumour going around. So hopefully, with the side that, if in a perfect world, the majority of those re-sign, you've got a core of team, a very good core, and the loan signings add the spice to it. Whereas perhaps in the previous years, we've relied on the loan signings as being the key players, and that's what's really tripped us up. So hopefully this might be a change, and you get some good people in. I mean, clearly we need a centre forward, but in a perfect world, if we can sign a centre forward and then say the loan signings are not peripheral, but they're supplement us rather than actually be the main bulk of the team.
Yeah, loan contracts work. The more that they play, the less that you pay. Richie Wellens told us that some time ago, that there's a fee up front of say 150 grand. And every time they play, so much is knocked off that fee. So you could, in theory, actually pay nothing at the end of the season, which is a pretty good deal. Agree with Anna. Loan players should be free to supplement the squad, not be the spine of the team, to see Critchlow and Simpson return permanently. Jordan Turnbull would be a great signing. Egbo and Payne to stay too, please, says Alice. And also there's another one about Jordan Turnbull. Gordon says Jordan Turnbull is now a free agent. He was at Salford, I think, Rob, wasn't he, Jordan Turnbull?
He was, indeed he was. We do like harking back to our old players, don't we, as Swindon fans, I have to say. I wonder whether that ship might have sailed with Jordan Turnbull, and he's not the most reliable of defenders, although he does score a few goals for Salford. I think there's a case to be made, I think, for that when we go back to the loan argument. You have to look at what situation Swindon were in at the start of the season. We had no choice, did we? We had very, very few options. We had to go into the loan market to just provide enough cover to be able to get started on day one. And for those loan signings to be such a success goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where they're back at their parent clubs because they were so successful at Swindon. And the other clubs have taken the opportunity to have a look at them. Tyrese Simpson situation will always frustrate me. It will frustrate me forevermore, because whether you loved him or you loathed him, there was no doubt at all that was probably the player who'd come on the most from day one to the time that he went back. And all he ended up doing in the second half of the season was sat at home twiddling his thumbs because Ipswich wouldn't play him and they wouldn't send him out. He's had a wasted second half of the season. But I think when you look towards the loans for this season, absolutely covered off with what Anna and Andy have said already. They need to supplement what we've got. We need to get the core of the squad under contract, be our players, be Swindon players, preferably on 2-year contracts, if it's at all possible, so that we know that we won't be in this situation again where players will be if they're in demand, we will command a fee for them. And that's what we really want to see. Last season, we have to accept it. We know this close season was a problem. We know we could only offer 1-year contracts. Where we are now was always where we were likely to be come the end of the season. A whole load of players out of contract again, and we have to try and rebuild a squad. Hopefully, they've learned the lessons from that. They're in a financial position where they don't have to do that again next year.
It's true, though, Andrew, isn't it? I think Ben Chorley is pretty old school. He actually goes out and watches games, doesn't he? Rather than, the modern way seems to be look at YouTube and see whether a player, is good or bad. But that it seems to me that he actually goes out and watches, I don't know, Chesterfield Thirds or something on a Tuesday afternoon. It's very old school way of doing it, but hey, if that works out, that's great.
Yeah, no, I think between him and various others, there are plenty of games watched. I think the way it often seems to work these days, isn't it? You can kind of start by looking at players on video. There's all those sort of systems like Y Scout where you can see clips of players, but I'm not sure anything ultimately beats seeing a player in the flesh giving a whole performance for 90 minutes, and then you also obviously have to do your research to make sure, is he gonna kind of fit in sort of personality wise or dressing room wise, as well as be able to do the stuff on the pitch, because there are plenty of people who can do one and not always do the other. So there's all that. But I mean, they're clearly in an infinitely better position to start with than they were last year, and now perhaps teams as well have had the chance to see the kind of progression that Kessler Hayden has made and Simpson has made, and perhaps to some extent Jake O'Brien, and the fact Louis Barre's got game time. Maybe that will remove any bit of sort of uncertainty that teams had about loaning out players. I mean, if you're a Premier League team and you want to send out a young defender to get them roughed up a bit, but still have them try and pass out from the back, then Swindon's quite a good team to send them to.
Yeah. Let's have a look. We need a bigger squad, numbers and height. Bench was weak most games. Loan deal should change. A season loan should mean a season unless emergency callback. Simon, hello to you. Work both ways, though. We've had loans that we're fairly happy to give back in January. And yes, many of them coming in. So keep them coming in. We'd like to have your comments. What about loans then, Anna? I mean, the problem is with loans. I mean, Yeovil, it always seems to me, is the club that you look at and you say every year they had to rebuild. And we've kind of been like that. And people get attached to these players and they disappear. You never see them again. I mean, it is frustrating, isn't it? If you're a fan, you don't know. It's not your team, is it? That is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I talked about the strategy, and I'm sure they're looking at that. And there's very definitely a place for loan players in the Swindon squad. Mainly because you need perhaps some younger legs, which can give you a kick when you need it. And Garner, we know, is good with young players. That's so said the reason he came into coaching and management in the first place. So Premier League and Championship teams and whoever else will look at it and go, okay, we're going to get some good game time for those players. But there has to be that balance, very definitely. And So let's just, we'll see what happens, but we definitely need key cover in some of those places so that we aren't reliant on those loan players. I'm sure as somebody referred to, Ben Chorley and Garner are already drawing up their lists, and they probably had those lists for some time, and we'll be in negotiation or discussion with some of those higher placed clubs right now, with a view to bringing players in, and they know they'll get game time. So
Yeah, Ben Garner, when I spoke to him at the dinner, the supporters club dinner, said they had two lists, obviously, to prepare for whichever league they may be in. So, that, and they would have done their due diligence on those players, I would imagine. And actually, Andy, I've just thought about this. This is completely random, but we played Man City in the Cup, and there seemed to be quite good relations between Swindon and Man City. We'd have a few of their youngsters, wouldn't we?
Well, I mean, obviously, Gabriel Jesus might be surplus requirement as well, won't he?
Fernandino's leaving, so we'll have him.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is it. You like to think that we've shown what we're capable of. We've played some lovely football this year. And the loan signings will go back, and I'm sure they'll be effusive about the setup, not just on the field but off the field. I think Brandon Cooper was very, very impressed about what he saw, and obviously going back to Swansea and all that sort of thing. So one would hope that we haven't done ourselves any harm. I mean, they've all had a chance, haven't they? I mean, that, as you said earlier, one of the biggest criticisms, you get a loan signing in and he's stuck on the bench all through. But all of our loan signings made a contribution, and they were playing all the time, weren't they? So like I said, we will need them, and we will need some good ones. But you just don't know now until this is where it all becomes. We don't know until the people that we do sign, those ones that have been offered contracts. The jigsaw is has to start being fitted.
He does. Simpson played 8 under-23 games since January, scored 5 goals. The fans have stepped in up to the plate financially in droves with increased gates and season tickets. Time for Clem & Co to demonstrate the same commitment by providing a decent playing budget. Louis Barry wants to come back, but more likely he'll go to a championship club. Hello, Darren. The new McCurdy, Payne or Reed may come through the door, somebody completely new. And the aforementioned Ian Rayner, who has signed a new 1-year contract, I would imagine, on the buses. Any truth in the Wimbledon striker coming here? Andrew, do you know about a Wimbledon striker coming here?
The sort of name I've seen. I've seen that name floating about. I mean, he was on loan at Colchester, I think, for the second half of the season. Didn't play that much. So other than that, I must admit I don't know a great deal about him. But I think there's maybe a bit of a Crystal Palace Ben Garner connection, but it wouldn't immediately be one that blows your socks off. But like I say, how much do we know about Mandela Egbo, I suppose?
What, like a Lucas Magiro blowing your socks off type signing? That one, that kind of signing.
I wouldn't imagine so in financial terms. No.
That was an extraordinary moment, wasn't it, Lucas Magiro? Who knows? Just breaking news: the Premier League has approved the Chelsea takeover by Bowleys, who is the LA Dodgers man. Is that right? I think that's right, isn't it? Yep. So Chelsea takeover has been approved.
Oh well, we can go and dig into their rich seam of loanees then.
Yes, I'm sure Harry McCurdy has some contacts in that particular area. Rob, Andy says 2 brick outhouse defenders, 1 brick outhouse centre forward, a must. Now, how does that fit in with Ben Garner's style?
You suspect it doesn't, don't you? Let's be honest. But there is a point to that, and one of the messages you read out earlier on in terms of squad size and squad depth, there is no doubt whatsoever that we were such a good football inside last season, certainly the best football inside in that division, but we did lack a bit of physical strength. And when you look at a centre-back pairing towards the end of the season who were excellent for us, Conroy and Bowdry, there still wasn't really that physical size there. And I think in this division, although a lot more teams seem to play a bit more football now, you do need that presence in both boxes. We don't score enough goals from corners. We concede too many from set pieces. I think there is a real clamour from my side to get a big, strong defender in. The likes of a Guthrie that's been mentioned would suit us down to the ground, I think. But you don't want a pair of them because you still need to retain that footballing ability. You need someone who's decent enough on the deck, not necessarily his main strength being decent on the deck, as long as he's the one who's going to put himself in front of everything that comes forward. Up front, the way we play, we wanted to play off of Josh Davidson a lot in the second half of the season, probably more so than we did off Tyrese Simpson in the first half of the season. There was a bit of an evolution there. So I wouldn't be against at all strong centre forward coming in. But again, we all know goal scoring centre forwards cost money. So this isn't going to be something you're going to just pluck off a tree somewhere. You've got to find your right player for it. And squad depth, ultimately what's cost us this year, for me anyway, you look at those last 6 games, Swindon virtually were unchanged. There wasn't enough competition from the bench to be able to disrupt that unit, even though they were playing well. Yes, we had injuries. Yes, we've had suspensions, but the squad was always 2 or 3 players light throughout the season. And we definitely need to solve that in this window.
Right. One name that's been mentioned here, Aidan Flint out of contract. Andrew, would we like him back? And also, should have kept hold of Anthony Grant. This is not the only comment about Anthony Grant. Letting Grant go when grinding results out was needed was a mistake, in my opinion. Interesting, isn't it, the Anthony Grant situation? Disappeared off to Scunthorpe, and of course that turned out to be a nightmare, didn't it? But let's talk about somebody like Aidan Flint. What would that fit?
I guess you've certainly got the height there and the set piece threat there. I can't imagine that he would come cheap. Let's put it like that. I think any experienced player dropping down from the Championship is would have to contemplate a very serious wage cut. I know we've done the Grant debate to death, but I think you saw in that game with Scunthorpe, although he's playing in a poor side, I think he'd sort of receded a little bit in terms of how he could get around the pitch. So I will gently disagree with that. But a centre half in the Flint mould would be nice. Could play a bit 6'3", 6'4", can score from set pieces. But if they're 6'3", 6'4", can score from set pieces and they're quick, then they're not playing in League Two, are they? So it's there tends to be sort of at this level something you've got to kind of sort of sacrifice or give up, or perhaps isn't quite there for them to be at this level in the first place.
Aidan Flint's goal at Brentford in the playoffs, an amazing moment. I think somebody lost a tooth at that moment, didn't they, Rob?
Guilty as charged.
The best thing was that the steward found it for you. That was brilliant. I thought it was a great moment. Right. What about you, Anna? What are your priorities in terms of what we need? I mean, the football at times was great, or at times it wasn't great. It was one of those seasons, wasn't it? Where do you sit with this?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. That at times we were just fantastic, like in that first half of the final game of the season at Walsall, 3-0 up. What a fantastic footballing display that was. And yet, when we think about the second leg of the playoffs at Vale Park, we really weren't at it that day, and we couldn't seem to come out of this sort of slumber almost and pick ourselves up into that and morph into that team we've been at. At Walsall. So clearly you need some consistent players. I don't know how you know that when you're signing them, but players like Ian Dolo, who is consistent performer throughout. And you also need to shore up the defence and get that key position up front. So Beaudry, I think, is on the retained list, I would say, because he offers a lot more than just his football skills. If he can keep fit, great, because he's someone that another centre-back can learn off. And I think you saw that with Conroy in the last few games of the season, that centre-back pairing looked great, really. And maybe it would, some of the results would have been different if you had that earlier on in the season. But I wondered with Beaudry if there's some talk about him picking up some coaching, for example. He's definitely old head on old shoulders. Whether his body can go much further and much longer, we honestly don't know, do we? But certainly having his presence in the dressing room is going to be a must. And then up front, I mean, I think some people are looking back at Tyree Simpson with a little bit of rose-tinted glasses, to be honest. Not because he wasn't a good player, but because of the amount of stick people were giving him when he was here. And then suddenly he's gone back to Ipswich, and he's the best thing since sliced bread. So I wouldn't mind seeing him back at Swindon. I don't think he'll come. But I'd like to see, I thought Davison did a fantastic job for us, really, albeit not a natural goal scorer. But his physical presence up front and defensively on corners for us, I thought was exceptional. So I wouldn't mind seeing a Davison-like player for McCurdy and another to play off. So, a couple of key positions there, centre-back pairing or three at the back, whatever we do, and target man or someone who can do the hold-up play, I would say, up front.
Talking of old school, any more news on Charlie Austin? Bring back Joe Tomlinson. Tomlinson, of course, who was a great success, or sadly got injured, which really was a bit of a blow. Any chance of getting Ben Garner or Ben Chorley on here over the summer? That is what we're working on, so stand by. Obviously, I think they're having a break now. I would imagine they are, but as soon as we can, we will. Charlie Austin, Andy, this has been discussed so often, and it's. I mean, I've seen Cardiff have been linked with him. Championship clubs are still being linked with him. That means championship money. We can't afford it, can we?
It takes up a big slice of your budget. I mean, we've talked many times, Charlie Austin, arguably one of the greatest finishers to have played for Swindon Town. So we get, a little bit, nostalgic. But he's got injury issues or had injury issues, and he takes a huge slice of your wage structure up, and he gets injured. I know all players can get injured. I'd far rather use our money more wisely and have a deeper squad, for the Januaries and Februaries. That time just after Tranmere, that sort of that period where you looked at the bench and there was just nobody available. With all due respects to the East and the Mitchell Lawsons, I'd far rather have a greater depth than gamble on one player. We keep forgetting we do have Mr. McCurdy, who did score 24 goals this year, and with no guarantee that he's going to do the same. No. But he was our goal scorer this year, so I would like to see the money invested more wisely. I mean, if Charlie wants to come for Div 2 wages, snap your hand off. But he's not going to, is he?
Well, he's a professional footballer, so and he's in the market, so there we go. I just thought it might be worth reiterating the retained list at this point, just to say that the players under contract: Ricky Aguiar, George Calmedo, Ben Gladwin, Ellis Iandolo, Harry McCurdy, Harrison Minturn, Louis Reed, Lewis Ward, Johnny Williams, and a 1-year option on Mo Dabre has been taken. Offered contracts: Matthew Baldry, Manny Egbo, Harry Parsons, Akin Odamao, Jack Payne, Jojo Wallacott, and they're in talks with Rob Hunt, who of course is injured at the moment. Not offered contracts: Dion Conroy, Ryan East, Manny Edem, Jaden Mitchell-Lawson, and those returning to their parent clubs: Louis Barry, Brandon Cooper, Josh Davison, Jake O'Brien, Joe Tomlinson, with Jordan Lydon remaining. His progress is being monitored. He's been injured, of course, for a long time. So that is still being looked at. Daz says, Austin too injury prone. He'd be kicked off the park in League Two. Interesting to discuss. He was on 17,000 per week at QPR. I think, Rob, that's a little bit out of our pay scale, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll move for 17 grand a week. That's fine by me. No, I think we can. I think financially we can rule him out. Whether, who knows what may happen in the future, but I think it's a non-starter for me, I have to say. And again, we're back to that nostalgia thing again, isn't we? Let's find every ex-player for Swindon that's out of contract and see if we can entice them back. But I think we've set the blueprint, haven't we? Really, I think that's one thing that Ben Garner has done in his time with us this season is you can see what type of players he wants to bring in, and I'm sure that those two shopping lists you mentioned earlier on for League One and League Two, I'm sure those shopping lists will have included an awful lot of younger players, because I think he's very, very big on developing younger players to see that improvement level. That's how he effectively has retained his stripes from his coaching days. I think we will see, hopefully, some learns from last season. The fact that we were a little bit smaller than most of the teams we came up against, Port Vale second leg being a classic example of a team that just wanted to come and kick us off the park, wasn't something that we could deal with. So we need a little bit of physical strength in there too. And I'm sure whatever players were on the League Two shopping list for this year, I'm sure conversations have probably already started behind the scenes that we don't know about. So it wouldn't come as any shock at all to me if we don't even recognise many of the players that are on that list. We didn't recognise many of them at the start of this season, and look what we're talking about now.
Yeah, exactly. We should never look back, just forward. Better players are available. I am sure that's what's needed. Also known as Roy Carter. Sorry, there's an R missing there. Sorry, showing my age. I don't think Roy Carter's available at the moment.
Wish he was.
Yeah, absolutely. What a player that was. My goodness me. Let's have a look. Liam, hello, Liam. Good evening. I am reassured by how well prepared or organised all of this is compared to previous years of chaos. And I think, Andrew, that's an important point, isn't it? But the one thing they want to do, I would imagine, is if players are going to go, even though they've been offered contracts or they're under contract, they want it sorted quickly, don't they? They don't want to mess about all summer and then find that they're off on the 29th of June or the 1st of July or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's the classic thing, isn't it? I think when we sort of spoke to Paul Jewell as he left his director of football role, I think when he was casting blame elsewhere, I think two seasons ago as classic, I think they were basically waiting on one player and they kept waiting, and then that one player didn't show up, and then suddenly it was scramble time to try and see what else was left among the the various bits and bobs available on the market. So that's the classic position you don't want to be in, really. It's still squad's still a bit light on kind of centre backs and centre forwards, and I think you go back to Rob's point a bit. It's kind of how much will Ben Garner just tweak things or veer a little bit away from some of the kind of passing at the back we saw in the first half of the season. I mean, the second half of the season, I think we did get it forward a bit more early, a bit more often, and sort of change things around. So whether he will kind of adapt and sort of tweak around the edges to deal with some of the realities of League Two, then 6'4" centre halves and set pieces. It'll be interesting to see if he's prepared to sort of compromise a bit or evolve the way we want to play.
By the way, we should say, despite you both appearing on these panels many times, this is the first time that Rob Hartley and Andrew Halls have appeared together. So it's quite a momentous occasion, I think, on this occasion. So nice to see you both together.
We've seen quite enough of each other in a nice way.
Yeah, you were only two people in the stadium last year, basically, weren't you? Yeah. So Anna, what about that? We want it sorted as soon as possible. It isn't the way football is it? I mean, it generally doesn't happen like that, but it would be nice to know you've got your settled squad, so they're ready for pre-season training.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a pipe dream, really, to think we're going to be sorted out very quickly. There's going to be a lot of negotiation going on, even with those that have been made offers. There could be teams coming in for those on the retained list. We're not even past the true end of the season, are we? We've still got the playoff final on Saturday. So, I think it's I think it's going to roll on for a long time. But hopefully, we'll be ahead of where we were. Well, we know we'll be ahead of where we were last season, and hopefully we'll be ahead of all the other previous closed seasons under Power, because we can be. Whether the budget is going to be significantly different from last season, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen, doesn't it? I think it's unlikely we're going to be spending on fees. I would say we're going to be looking for those players that are been released by other teams and can pick them up for free. But like Rob said, I think we'd be surprised at some of the names we see, partly because we won't have heard of them. But I'm pretty confident in the recruitment that Chorley and Garner can put together. We've seen that this season. Some names we didn't recognise, and look what they did with them. So I think it's all about, can you build new teams, new squads, and we've seen that they can. And Ben Garner's done that, you could argue, several times this season, not just once at the beginning of the season, but also in January and a little bit later on, with injuries. So I'm confident he can do it, whoever we signed, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'll have a summer in which to deal with that. Thanks for mentioning Saturday. Anybody going to watch it?
I'm steering well clear.
Yeah.
I must have a cat to deflee or something like that, I'm sure.
Excellent. I mowed the lawn today, so I haven't got that excuse. Anyway, this from Ashley. Thoughts on these transfer rumours? I've seen Corey Andrews, Josh Andrews, Sid Nelson, Ben Thompson, Chan Harris. Those are some of the names. We could throw thousands in, Andy, couldn't we?
Nicky Josie.
I tell you what, it's very strange with Nicky Jose. He was running along the canal path near where I live last season in the summer. And I very nearly stopped and asked him, are you going back to Swindon? Because he generally does, doesn't he, in the end? So where are you with that? I mean, Chorley and Garner, Andy, they have a track record on recruitment. And I would imagine with these lists, they know what they're after. They know their targets. If they can get them within budget, great.
Well, I've been very impressed. I mean, as I say, here we were, a little bit further down last year, July time, and going, we haven't got, where we were. And to be able to bring those players and the quality of those players at very short notice. So I've got a great deal of faith in Ben Chorley and his black book. And like Anna said, and Rob, there's a lot of players out there that we might know of, but we don't connect them to Swindon. And they'll be our heroes in 6-9 months' time. So yeah, I've got a great deal of faith. I've got a great deal of confidence. It's all a mind game at the moment. We don't know how many of those players that we've got that have been offered contracts that sign. I quite like Richie Wellens' model of. I think he liked to have 2 players for every position. Did he not? He sort of have a squad. Obviously a squad of 22 plus some academy players. So we need. That means quite a few people to come in. Whether we can actually extend to that, but that would be my idea. But I have faith in certainly their recruitment. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, Ghana must be careful not to allow Swindon to be just an academy for young player development. Tom says, as already said, Glen Hoddle Academy might find a gem or 3. We're already ahead. We have more than 6 pros signed on at Melksham away in pre-season. And what about the Twine money? Will that be used to strengthen? That's an interesting, Rob, isn't it? It's 20% of any profit, is that right, of the deal. If Twine goes for 5 million, then we get 20% of whatever the profit is. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yes, whatever we got in the first place, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which was rumoured to be about 350, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you're looking at Scott Twine in the ballpark now of 5 million plus potentially based on what he's achieved. I mean, you're talking £1 million potentially. The difference that could make at our level is staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we can't hang our hats on it. It's not our money. It's not our player. So we just have to assume that we're not getting that money, shop accordingly. And obviously, if it happens, it happens. Great. I just look at pre-season at the moment and think we can't lose sight of the fact that the first game's the 30th of July. It's actually so much earlier than it usually is. And you're actually going to have more than a month's worth of football before the transfer window ends. That could play a significant part in enticing other players from loan clubs, if you're bigger clubs, if you take where we're coming from. If we get off to a decent start next season, there is a damn good chance that in that last week before the window shuts, we could see some really good young prospects come and join us from higher up the ladder, I think. But we can't rely on that. I think we go back to the point we've mentioned a couple of times already. The squad must be Swindon players predominantly this year. It doesn't need to be made up of our best players being loan players. They need to be Swindon players. And if we can establish that criteria during the last few weeks of June, first couple of weeks of July, whatever it might be, so that we've got a strong enough squad to take us into the first part of the season, then hopefully August will bring us a couple of little gems that make all the difference.
Hello to Stuart. Was really disappointed with Barry's progress, and Davison was really poor. So, 2 decent replacements, and we'll be going looking at automatics next season. What about pre-season, Andrew? It's all been very quiet on the subject of friendlies. Do you know of any? The thing is, we ended up with no disrespect, but it was Melksham, Hungerford, Supermarine, Weymouth, and Peterborough. Those are the friendlies basically last year. Do we know of any this year?
I haven't heard of anything yet. Rob's right, incredibly. It feels like an incredibly sort of fast turnaround. So
you've gone very quiet all of a sudden.
Sorry, let me hit a button there.
That's better.
So no, I haven't heard anything definitive on what we've got for the friendlies yet. Rob's right; it's a really sort of fast turnaround. I'm looking at the date today. It's barely 2 months till, Lord help us, we're getting ready for the first dose of madness of next season. So they've got to move swiftly. There's not much time to turn it around, but they're just in an infinitely better position because they can actually turn up and say, "Yeah, we'll be able to offer you a team if we arrange a friendly with you," which is definitely better, but definitely better than last season. I'm going to slightly disagree about loanees because I think when you're sort of in the lower divisions and there's so much turnaround, how much difference is there? Just to sort of throw this out there between a young player who's on a 1-year loan and has maybe got their first chance at professional football, and someone who's 28 and has just signed a 1-year contract. You'd hope they'd be about as committed as each other.
I give you James Milner and Michael Carrick loan signings. They didn't do half bad, I don't think.
They could play.
I think they had a decent career. Andy says Davison poor, not having that. I mean, he really split people, didn't he? I mean, the point is he worked his socks off in every single game he played, and he wasn't a goal scorer. We all know that. I mean, we could point to that third opportunity against Port Vale in the first leg, and all right, he might have stuck it in, but he didn't. He does divide people, but I kind of thought he worked his socks off and, gave you 100%, and that's all you can ask from a footballer, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree. Not a natural goal scorer. He did score a few good goals for us. the shift he put in, game out, to be fair, was absolutely tremendous. You cannot fault his commitment. And some folks might say, okay, well, he's there to score goals, but he's actually partly there to be a foil for the other goal scorers, i.e. McCurdy, for example. So players like Davison are always going to split people, and unless he's scoring 20, 25 goals a season, there's always going to be some people who say, well, he shouldn't be on the pitch because he's not putting the ball in the net. For me, he was definitely value for money, and I do take on board what Andrew said about loan players can be just as committed to the club as older players on a 1-year deal. The difference, obviously, is that you have the potential to lose them in the January window, and that was what really messed us up this January. So, but one other thing, which is I think somebody messaged in to say, with so and so, we're looking at autos next season. Don't start. And it's going to be just as hard next season as it was this season,
if not harder, because there'll be some money in League Two next season, won't there?
Yep. And expectations, bear in mind, expectations from some fans are going to be very much heightened next season versus this season because of what's happened this season. So let's just keep everything, calm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think one of the greatest results recently in terms of football was Wrexham not winning the FA Trophy at the weekend, because it just proved that money doesn't buy you success, and they're not guaranteed to go up, are they? It's that simple. But there is a few quid around in League Two next season, so we should be aware of that. Kevin says Davison couldn't head a ball. And then Mark says Davison always put a shift in. Just at times he had the touch of a skirting board. I liked him. But dividing fans. So there we are. Lee says, although expecting Williams will have a bit of time off after the Wales games in June, which is another factor, of course, the World Cup possible qualifiers. And if they do qualify for the World Cup, of course, he'll be missing in November, December. Supermarine friendly always happens. Good payday for Marine last season. It was Clem's first appearance as town saviour. It was. I remember him walking around the touchline and everybody suddenly going, there he is. He's done it. He's bought the club. A whole season, and he might not have been far off 20. I'm guessing it's either Simpson or Davison. Not sure which one that is. Concentrated too much on the defender rather than the ball. Always off balance. So there we go. Final reflections then on the retain list. Andy, kind of what we were expecting with the likes of Dion Conroy not coming back, not what we were expecting with the likes of Louis Reed already under contract.
No, I think on reflection, I think, as you said, expected Conroy to go. Very, very pleased. I think they say the big thing for me is Reed and Williams. I said, if I had, if I could have two players to re-sign next year with Payne and Reed, and the fact that one's already done it, and I just hope now that Payne, so yeah, it's a very good start. And now, as I say, we have the phony war now. We've got a sort of, a little bit of time. I think they go back to training on June the 20th, I think Rob Hunt said. So it's a very short period of time, but it's a lot longer than it was last year.
Yes. Rob, your thoughts? I've got another question from last night, which I'll ask you after this, but your thoughts on that retain list?
Well, as you said, the phony war starts now. We don't know yet how many of those players that have been offered contracts will sign. We hope that they all will. Reality is some will, some won't, I suspect. It's a basis of a squad that we know, having seen them perform this year, gives us a lot of hope for next season. But there is an awful lot of tinkering still to do, and a very, very busy summer ahead for all in the recruitment department. And I wish them the absolute best of luck.
Andrew, your thoughts? It's June the 20th, I think they go back, isn't it? So they've got about 3 weeks off before they start again.
God, Lord help us. So already, even if Payne were to leave, you've got a pretty strong basis to work from in midfield. When you look at that, Aguiar, Gladwin, Iandolo, Williams, Reed. So that brackets Leiden as well, although, we don't know how like they are. So you're in a good position there. You're a bit light on fullbacks. I think ideally you want one of Egbo or Hunt to commit to you, and then you're quite happy, and you'd like a bit more Baudry for all the reasons we've talked about. The big question for me is, what sort of strikers do they go with to complement McCurdy? Do they go for sort of more fleet of foot striker, or do they go for players more in the Davison mould? And I mean, for all the frustration with Davison, I've just had a quick look. His goal scoring record ends at 9 goals in 23 games. Which, that's like about one in 2.5 for a striker who brings you quite a lot off the ball, or as well as the kind of scoring. So I think he's had a good time here. I wouldn't completely rule him out coming back, although obviously Charlton have just activated his contract. But it's there's a bit of work still to be done in defence, and like I say, I think the big thing is what sort of strikers are going to come in as well as who.
Yeah, I would say it also. He scored one of the greatest Route 1 goals I've ever seen against Scotland. I mean, it was just a magnificent, poetic bit of football. He was alongside Woolacott when Woolacott punted the ball up. He got onto the end of that and smashed it past the keeper. It was pure poetry. And if anybody ever says Route 1 football's no good, take a look at that goal. It was magnificent. Anna, what about you? In terms of
I thought his hamstring was going to ping the way he was taking it down the right wing there. But good on him for putting that ball in the net. You know, this speculation will keep us going, won't it, until the 30th of July. So it's such early days. Interesting to see, but let's just go with the ride and follow what happens, I think.
Yeah, just a final thought then, and this was from Robert last night, and it wasn't totally answered, about should the playoff continue? Top 3, tougher fines or points deducted, and we still officially haven't heard from the FA on the EFL. That's regarding Port Vale. Next time this happens might be an FA Cup tie where fans are on the pitch attacking players, and next time might be more serious. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to put rules in place for clubs and the supporters. Now is the time to draw a line in the sand and say, if you cross it, you're in some serious deep doggy-do. We're trying to get English football back to hosting Euros and World Cups. UEFA aren't going to tolerate this sort of behaviour in a major football tournament. Sorry for the moan, just don't want it swept under the carpet, hoping it'll go away, because it won't. So we act now. Okay. Great points on the Port Vale situation. And Chris was telling us last night the Supporters Club have written to the various authorities about it. Andy, the playoffs, should they go, or should we go with the top 3?
They're not very nice, are they? If you're in them. But I mean, they keep the season alive, don't they? I quite like to sort of investigate. It looks a bit messy if you can try and understand it. I'd like to investigate how the conference do it. That they have, the sort of 6th and 7th, and then if you come second, you sit there and wait for everyone else to sort themselves out and play them in the final, don't you? Which I quite like. Quite like that. You get sort of a reward for your achievement in that season. But no, I'm on the fence with them. I hate them to be in them, and we haven't had the best of luck in the last few years. But what's the greatest moment in Swindon's history apart from 1969? It's got to be Swindon-Leicester, isn't it?
Rob, your thoughts on the playoffs?
3 points for me. I hate the playoffs with an absolute passion, and I always have, but they're not going to go away. They're always going to stay in football now because it's too much of a money spinner to lose. So they will stay. They will definitely, if you were to ask me my opinion, for sure, I would change it to the conference model. I think it properly rewards the teams that finish higher in the league. They get the home game. Everybody else has to travel away if they finish lower in the playoffs. That, for me, is a situation that works. And you also bring in potentially a couple of extra teams as well into the playoff mix. So I think that definitely works. And extremely controversially, because that's me all over, I'd have the penalty shootout before the start of the first leg. In fact, I wouldn't have 2 legs at all. It'd be 1 leg games, and I'd have the penalty shootout at the start. Takes away that sudden moment that somebody is responsible for your entire season going up the spout, but it also allows that it takes away the real pinch point that we saw on Thursday night, which is immediate glory for some fans, so they come hurtling on the pitch. You know who's going to win the tie if it goes to penalties before the game's played, and that gives you potentially 120 minutes to do something about it. That, for me, would be a much better solution.
Andrew, I mean, gosh, you've got plenty of mileage in your legs regarding the playoffs. I was old enough to have done the original playoffs when they first came in. They are incredibly nerve-wracking for everybody concerned. Top 3 go up or playoffs? Where do you stand on that?
I think the value that playoffs have in extending the season or keeping the season alive for teams is kind of economically vital. I think if you're getting rid of them, the current broadcast holders who love telling us every 5 minutes how great the playoffs are during the game are not going to be happy, and we have to keep them happy. The only thing that's kind of crossed my mind in response to Thursday was whether you change the system slightly, and you would lose games doing it. The way I'm going to suggest is you have a one-off game, but you have a one-off game at a neutral ground, which kind of, when you've got equal numbers of fans roughly in the ground, that deters the whole pitch invasion aspect. And for all the joy that the Charlton game will live with me for, until I shuffle off, I do feel slightly uncomfortable with an entire season's work going down to a shootout. So just as an idea to throw about, they're one-off games at a neutral ground. They go to extra time if necessary, and if it's still level at extra time, the team that finished higher in the league goes through to the next round. So you still get some benefit of having finished higher in the league, even though you're playing a one-off game at neutral venue.
Oh, interesting and revolutionary. Lots of comments coming in. Andy says playoffs have given us some of the best occasions in our history, even the failures. Flint's last-minute equaliser at Brentford will live long in the memory. Clubs only get 12.8% of revenue in the playoffs. The rest goes to EFL, etc. Simon doesn't agree with you, Rob. The conference model playoffs? No. Simple as that. In League 2, the 4 teams contesting simply weren't good enough over 46 games. Fingers crossed for a better class of officials next season, but I won't hold my breath. When you buy a season ticket, does it not say no going on the pitch? I don't know, really. I haven't read it that close, so just don't go on the pitch. It's that simple, really. Tony says there'll be some quick signings, possibly might be surprised. Interesting. So many ifs, buts, and maybes. That's what makes our Swindon so great, says Ricky. Love the show. Thank you very much, Rich. That's very kind of you. Anna, you in the playoffs, where do you stand on this, or sit, or whatever? What is your situation?
Like you, Vic, I go back to the first ever season of the playoffs, which was great in some measure. You love them and you hate them, don't you? You love them if you win them, you hate them if you lose them. It's a terrible way to go out on penalties. Is that worse than the way that Notts County went out last night? I don't know. It's all gut wrenching, isn't it? When you go out at that point in the season, when you're so close, you're within touching distance at least of that next game, that next final or whatever it is. I'm not sure I like the conference model, but you just ultimately, I just want to go up automatically. I don't want to have to be in the grip of playoff fever for weeks. Are the tickets going to arrive? Are we going to get enough tickets? Are we going to have to stamp up for penalties? Let's if you can go automatic. The playoffs are not going away.
Absolutely. Leicester at Wembley, the best game ever, and it was a playoff final. It was pretty good. Let's be honest about that. Right. I'll just run through the retain list once again, just in case you haven't seen it or heard it. Players under contract: Wickley Aguiar, George Cowmeadow, Ben Gladwin, Ellis Iandolo, Harry McCurdy, Harrison Minturn, Louis Reed, Lewis Ward, Johnny Williams, and the 1-year option has been taken up on Mo Dabre. Offered contracts: Matthew Bowdry, Manny Egbo, Harry Parsons, Akin Odomayo, Jack Payne, Jojo Wallacott, and they're in talks with Rob Hunt regarding his future. He's injured at the moment, as we know, of course. Not offered contracts are captain Dion Conroy, Ryan East, Manny Edem, the third choice keeper, Jaden Mitchell-Lawson, and returning to their parent clubs, Louis Barry, Brandon Cooper, Josh Davison, Jake O'Brien, and Joe Tomlinson. And Jordan Lydon remains at the club. His progress is being monitored after injury. That is the retained list. And I'm glad to say, in discussions with those higher up, all of you have been retained for next season. Is that all right?
Just have to talk to my agent first, Vic.
Okay. The terms don't change. They stay the same.
That I can believe.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. That was fantastic. we didn't talk a lot about Jojo, did we, in that one? So
no, we did not.
No.
Well, should we quickly go around and ask?
And as Darren said in the comments, no, we're not back tomorrow. So, but yeah, so we hopefully will be back next Monday. We're just sorting some bits and pieces out for that. And as I said last night, we will keep going on a Monday as long as people want us to, and as long as we can get the people. Yes, we have got a list of people that we want to get on. Ben Chorley, Ben Garner, Rob and Clem, people like that. So we will be working to sort out some dates for those. So
yeah, we should pay tribute to all the medical staff. We mentioned Matthew Bowdry and people like they've done a fantastic job throughout the course of the season. Should we quickly go round about Jojo Wallacott then? We might as well do that
if you want to.
Now you mentioned it, Andy. Is he going? Is he staying? What do you reckon?
I think he's going. I think a similar situation happened with Dion Conroy. Sort of had, when they fell out in January, they had this sort of injury, and I think the fact that he's not come back. And when we were talking to him at the sponsors' dinner, you just got the feeling that his head's probably been turned. Garner probably saying to him, Garner, the country, not the manager, they're saying you need to probably play to a higher standard, for your World Cup aspirations. So I think he's gone. I don't think he was a re-sign. It's a shame. It's good goalie.
Yeah, we got Lewis Ward, of course, who's come in and done a great job towards the end of the season. This is from Paddy, by the way, Rob. To celebrate the Reed and Williams good news, is Rob Hartley prepared to give us a few quick Paddy Stavros shuffle dances live on air?
Anything for the public, but I don't think I'd be good enough for it, Vic.
Fair enough. Strictly haven't rung yet.
Hand gestures, has that?
Yeah, fair enough. Strictly haven't rung yet, but they will do later.
I don't think they'll be started either.
Jojo Wallacott.
Just
Jojo Wallacott. What's your view on that?
I don't think there's any doubt he'll be gone. I don't think that one's really one that's going to take too long during the summer to sort out. I suspect he may already have clubs in mind, and they may already be discussing before the end of the season. It's that classic World Cup syndrome, isn't it? Or that is classic country versus club argument. You leave your club for a couple of weeks, somebody comes in, takes your place. If that player does the business, then he should keep his place. And I remember the first time Wallacott went away this season, he'd been fantastic, hadn't he? We couldn't believe the progression he'd made from the loan signing from last year. He'd been absolutely outstanding. Lewis Ward came in and saved a penalty at Forest Green, who ultimately won the league. Yeah. So I think we will be searching for another goalkeeper to rival Lewis Ward at the start of the season.
Andrew?
It's hard to see him staying, isn't it? Because he wouldn't even necessarily come back as number one for the end, for the start of the season. If you've got Ward v Wallacott too, and I assume that Garner will want him to be playing regularly. You would imagine, or that would be the best way for him to kind of keep in their good books for the World Cup. And ridiculous as it sounds, I'm not sure he's guaranteed that here now. So you assume that either his displays for Garner will have caught the eye, or he'll feel I've got to make sure I'm playing somewhere. So seems unlikely, which is a bit of a shame.
Anna? We should say Lewis Ward, of course, take 2 penalties in the penalty shootout and ended up in the losing side. Can't do much more than that in a keeper, can you? But what about Wallacott?
I'm happy with Lewis Ward, and good luck and goodbye, Jojo.
Okay, fair enough. There you are, Chris. All done.
There you go. So just a couple of things. Daz, yes, I have been in contact with Marcus to see if he and the groundsman team can do a slot for us, because I think they're doing some good work at the moment. What they are doing goes over my head, but it seems to be working well. And Shane, yes, I love you too. Thank you very much. So we will be back. As I said, keep looking on socials, and when we've got some dates, we'll let you know. Thanks again, panel, for coming on at short notice. Much appreciated. And we will see you all soon. Bye.